Hello and welcome back to the Keep Right On podcast. I'm Alex Dicken and I'm joined by my usual co-host and colleague Brian Dick to dissect Blues' 3-0 defeat to Coventry City on Saturday and look ahead to Sheffield Wednesday on Tuesday, maybe with a little bit of an eye on Wrexham on Friday in a big week for Blues in the Championship. Brian, how are you bearing up after our trip to the CBS on Saturday?
I'm all right, thanks. Thanks for checking in. You warned me about your moving camera, and it literally just did the minute you opened your mouth. It zoomed in on you, didn't it? Yeah, I am bearing up it. The risk of downplaying it. It was only one football match, so yeah, it was a poor performance by Blues. We'll come on to the press conference afterwards, won't we? An interesting press conference, let's say that. We'll go a little bit more in depth as we talk about that. But yeah, it was a day when once one thing started going wrong, it just sort of snowballed and everything started going wrong. So yeah, not great. Yeah,
should we do it chronologically? So should we start with what first went wrong, which is obviously Marvin Dutch getting injured in the warm-up, and then so that's obviously a big blow. Chris Davies said that happened literally had a matter of seconds to make the call to play Dykes rather than Kyogo. Dykes made sense to us, didn't it? Because he's kind of like for like. You don't have to change the game plan too much. And to be fair to Lyndon Dykes, I actually thought he started the game quite well. He won a few aerial duels. It was just, not his fault that Blues players around him weren't picking up the pieces. But then the first goal goes in from Thomas Santin, and to be honest, that was a catalogue of errors, wasn't it? If we analyse it properly, the throw in the first place, Blues didn't get it away, and Peck he was level with Thomas Santin, marking him in the box, and then all of a sudden he's not, and Thomas Santin's free and allowed to just tap it in when Allsop's parried, Kitching shot out. That was poor from Peck, wasn't it?
Yeah, can we go way back, because there actually has been quite a bit of discussion as to whether Dykes was the right call.
Okay.
At that point, I've seen quite a lot of comments in my timeline saying it should have been Kyogo because he stretches defences, and there have been some comments about the Dykes selection being a negative one. Let's drill down a little bit on that, because at the time, to me, as like you, when the press guy came around the press box and said, "Oh, Dutch has been injured, Dykes in," we all kind of thought, okay, that does feel like the next cab off the rank, doesn't it? Do we think that anything that the Kyogo one would have been a better call?
I think it's like for like, and that there was probably a plan for Kyogo to come on in that game on 55, 60 minutes or 70 minutes or whatever.
So you think the Dykes one is least disruptive, close to a game, potentially?
Yeah, because you've got to think of what it does to set pieces as well, haven't you? Chris Davies usually makes a point of putting 3 players of size in the starting 11. Those 3 players will be zonal. Kyogo comes in, that changes. Someone else's job changes. Probably, Ethan Laird or Brighter Size Sam, you'll have to, become that third zonal marker. So I think, as you say, Brian, least disruption, like for like. That's why he went for Dykes rather than Kyogo.
I wonder, had it happened on Thursday, whether Chris Davies has got more time to give Kyogo and a style change, some genuine thought potentially. But yeah, I suppose so close to the game, you sort of try and get the squarest peg into that hole, don't you? Really, that Dutch has left. Chris Davies did not want to talk about Dutch's injury in the post-match press conference, but we'll come on to that, won't we? You were talking about the first goal. So it was relatively even, wasn't it? Chris Davies did make this point in his press conference.
Good one, bro. You got there eventually.
Yeah, brilliant. That it was even until the red card. And, I didn't think Coventry were brilliant. For the first 15, 20 minutes, it did feel like 2 very organised teams just looking at each other. Don't you agree?
I do. And I was surprised by the way Coventry set up. Both teams, if you look at it, modern football, they looked exactly the same in shape. And,
they did.
They both pressed it a 4-4-2 as well, with Eccles moving up to join Hadji Wright and obviously Stansfield moving up to join Dykes. So get that out of the way, and they played very differently. Coventry, I thought, were quite direct, especially early on. They looked for a lot of over-the-top balls. They looked for Haji Wright early. Haji Wright was getting into fights with Clara and Robinson, and obviously that didn't end too well for Robinson in the end. But it was quite tight. I just thought, again, Achilles' heel for Blues has been set pieces, and it's a second phase of a set piece again. Like it's been, I think, 2 times already before that this season. They just need to get a grip on it. When they've got the first contact, then they need to get it away. It can't come back. And if it does come back and also makes a save, it can't be a Coventry player reacting first to it. And that was the theme of the afternoon, wasn't it? Because they had 2 rebounds.
Yeah, I did think they were faster to most second balls, whether in the penalty area or all over the pitch, to be honest with you. And you did highlight Peck's role in that, and it was a really poor performance from Sung-Ho Peck, I'm afraid, on Saturday. Peck has almost got Thomas Asante wrapped up, hasn't he? Has his arms around him, and then
he's holding him.
As the ball goes, as the shot comes in, and Alsop parries it, inexplicably, his only reaction is just to let go. Now, I understand he doesn't want to be seen to be pulling Thomas Asante back, but you have to do more than just let go and watch, don't you? That was just a really, really poor response from Peck in what was, as I said, was can we say his worst game for Blues? I'm trying to think back to, obviously he played pretty well in League One.
Yeah,
he got washed. His excellence kind of got washed away in the confusion of his when he first arrived in January 24, didn't it really? But yeah, I just thought he looked really passive, and this is, we'll maybe come on to individuals, but that moment for me summed up just the passivity of Blues once the goal went in. I just thought they struggled.
And then all of a sudden they're 1 behind on the back foot a little. The game, there wasn't an awful lot in it really in the next 30 minutes or whatever, 25, 30 minutes, until it comes to the red card 3-4 minutes before half time.
Do you not think it felt uphill at 1-0 down? Even with 11 men, it felt uphill, didn't it? And Sakamoto was starting to get some joy down his side. And there wasn't many attacks down Blues right, Coventry's left, but it did feel like the balance changed a little bit, I think.
Blues didn't look like scoring, did they? No. Definitely not. Whereas Coventry, I think they got in once more properly with Wright, didn't they? He's taken it round Allsop and hit the side netting. So they were the more threatening team. Haji Wright was definitely the most threatening forward on the pitch during that part of the game, especially. The red card, Brian, I've watched it back this morning, both yellow cards. And interestingly, I know Chris Davies complained about it in his post-match, saying that he thought both were harsh. Jack Robinson clearly didn't think both were harsh because he didn't react at all, did it? He reacted a little bit to the second one. But the first one on Josh Eccles, he's kind of cleaned him out, hasn't he? Eccles has got to the ball first and he's cleaned him out. It's a yellow card. And the second one, although there might not have been much contact, when Wright gets away from him on the halfway line there, and he's made the motion to pull or clip, it's gonna be a yellow card, isn't it? The annoying thing for Blues about that is that the ball was actually rolling through to Ethan Laird and he was about to play forward, so there was really no need to make the challenge. But obviously Robinson didn't know Laird was behind him.
Does Robinson need to be that tight in that situation? On a booking, and this is where I will take issue with Chris Davies. Is he's saying that players play differently when they're on a yellow card? That was his whole point about the Coventry players not being booked for kicking the ball away. Well, Jack Robinson didn't play differently when he was on a yellow card, did he? He got really tight to a big striker who was always likely to roll him.
I actually think, Brian, that Wright had rolled Robinson throughout the whole of the first half, by doing little things. He was doing it to Clara as well. He was kind of, doing the dark arts, the old-fashioned centre-forward play where off the ball he was doing things, and they were both shoving him. And, eventually it's led to Robinson making an ill-informed, misjudged decision and getting sent off. Yeah,
so let's move on. I think most people would agree that it was those 2 yellows were the first one was definitely yellow, and then the second time you give the referee a decision to make. And I thought Thomas Kirk refereed the game pretty well, if I'm honest. We can take out the kicking the ball away thing. I think Matt Grimes did the most egregious one, didn't he, where he kicked the ball away. But then didn't Thomas Asante get booked for kicking the ball away? Or
I'm unsure. I think there were a couple of times in the first half, Grimes being one of them, where they did kick the ball away. But it's not the basis of a press conference or that answer for me. So we'll come on to that in a bit.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. What was the actual question?
I don't know, Brian. We might as well. Shall we look on the second half now? So Blues get to half time, 1-0 down to 10 men. Chris Davies admitted himself, it's about regrouping at that point, isn't it? You've got to keep things tight for the next 25 minutes. Do not concede early. And, I think just over 3 minutes into the second half, they've conceded the second goal. And this one for me was really poor because it came into their box a couple of times and Christophe Clara was literally just repelling the danger, wasn't he? He was the guy who was jumping up, heading it away. And all it takes really is one ball to go over his head and Blues are, in trouble. It comes back in from Eccles and Asai Sami just didn't react quickly enough. It hits him and goes over the line. To concede a goal like that 3-4 minutes into the second half, I thought was really poor, to be honest.
Yeah, it was. And absolutely, what became an uphill task became an absolute mountain to climb then, didn't it? Blues were always going to struggle to get one chance to make it 1-1. They never really had much of a hope of getting two chances to make it 2-2. It was just sloppy. And as you said, the ball was never properly cleared. There was no one really fighting for the second ball when I think it was Sakamoto that picked out Eccles at the back post, wasn't it? There was an element of just kind of giving the Coventry winger time to pick out a man, and Eccles was round the back. No one had tracked him. It was absolutely symptomatic of the way Blues played on the day, and I've used the word passive. Maybe they were slow to respond, whatever it was. But when that goes in, there's just no way back. And I think in the second half, you can either praise Coventry for playing well and making it really difficult for Blues, and they did. They made the pitch big. They stretched Blues, and Blues had not much option other than just sort of sit in and try and mark space, did they? Or you can, did Coventry do it well, or did Blues just play badly or make it too easy for them, or a bit of both?
I think they made it too easy in the first 5 minutes of the second half to concede that second goal. Once that goes in, Brian, it's game over, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think they realised that, and the game plan they had created at half-time goes out the window, and then it is literally just damage limitation, isn't it? You try not to get beat 4-5. And to be fair, with the chances Coventry had in that closing 35, 40 minutes the second half after they scored, they probably could have had 4 or 5. They had Wright missed a very big chance in the after Allsop got caught playing out. They obviously did get the third goal through. Who got the third goal, Brian?
Victor Torp.
Victor Torp, after Ellis Sims had somehow got away from Aaron Cash, and that was a bit of a car crash defensively, and we'll come on to that. They just didn't have anything going forward, and they were quite fortunate in the end that it was only 3.
Yeah, they were, absolutely. The mitigation there is it's impossible. We are going to criticise Chris Davies, and we already have criticised Chris Davies. At 2-0 down, I don't know what else Blues could have done. I didn't see an escape route. Did you? Certainly not helping. The issue was, Keshin just letting the ball bounce and just totally failing to deal with what is a fairly straightforward punt down the middle that you'd expect, lower league centre backs to deal with. It was just the thing for me. The whole thing for me was just yes, there was adversity, but Blues just didn't respond to the adversity at all. And I think that went ignored in the post-match press conference. And I would say that's not really been a failing of Blues under Chris Davies. There have been adverse moments, and they have tended to come fighting back. But on Saturday, I think it was the first time where I just thought, wow, they've been actually beaten, and handily beaten, and they are almost defenceless. They couldn't really stop what Coventry were doing to them.
Yeah. Should we come on to the press conference then, Brian? So afterwards, Chris Davies goes around, he does the rounds, doesn't he? He speaks to Club TV or speaks to WM, and then he comes through to the main press conference. And it was there were a few things, weren't there, you can take away from it. One was his response to the question about the red card, in that he thought both bookings were harsh, and then talked at quite at length about really, why that Coventry players kicking the ball away should have been booked, and how that would have had an impact on the game. Did you think he needed, firstly, to put so much, I'd say, credence on that particular issue? Because, as we both said, even though they were down to 10 men, they were largely outplayed and didn't really do much after the red card to limit Coventry's offence.
I think what he did do is he did start off by saying that we made mistakes and Coventry, did well, and we didn't handle certain situations well. But that was maybe 10 seconds, and then there was another 90 seconds talking about or it felt like 90 seconds talking about the disparity in the way that the things were refereed. It was an odd line to go down, in my view. I think we were all quite surprised when we were in there listening to it, weren't we? That he chose to go that way. I think you just have to say, to me, it looked like it was a difficult match. Became more difficult when Dutch went off, more difficult when you go 1-0 down against a good side, increasingly difficult when you go down to 10 men, and then virtually impossible when you go down to 2 and 3-0. And then if you can just say that and then offer some mitigation, but it seemed to be overly weighted about the kicking the ball away, and I think to everyone in the room that felt like a side issue rather than the main issue. So that was, I thought that was a mistake, and if I'm honest, and it's not been well received. We cannot dress it up any other way than it's not been well received, has it?
Yeah, I'm surprised he went down that route, to be fair, given the context of the game. Like you say, Brian, there were, a lot went wrong for Blues, and he probably could have said, this, and this, then obviously game over at 2-0. We never looked like getting back into it. That's fair enough. Then there was the, I suppose, kind of constant question that he gets at the moment about kind of, why you're not creating enough. Because Blues, again, I think didn't have a shot on target, and that has been a theme recently. 4 of the last 5 games have ended in defeat without a goal. And he responded by, I'll read out the quote. I think if we're 11v11 for the whole game, then we have a shot on target. I have no doubt about that. So he's obviously referring to that he saw more than enough while Blues were at 11v11 before the Jack Robinson red card to say they would have worried or troubled Coventry's goal. They had moments, didn't they? I mean, I watched it back this morning again just to make sure I was, in the loop and everything that happened on the day. And in the first half, before the red card, they had a couple of moments. I think Kumas completely miscued a shooting attempt inside the box. That was half a chance to work the goalkeeper. Jay Stansfield had a shot that probably would have worked the goalkeeper had it not been blocked. But, Rushworth wasn't busy at all. So it is...
Tamari Gray put in a good corner, didn't he, from the far side as well?
Yeah.
And then he put in a reasonable cross from the right as well. So it was equal. Two cautious teams, as I said earlier, kind of looking at each other a little bit. But yeah, go on. Sorry.
I was going to say, do they do enough in those moments? Do they, not just in this game, but when it is 11v11 as usual, do they do enough to work the goalkeeper? Obviously, we saw them work the goalkeeper quite a bit against Swansea the previous week. I think 7 times on target.
Yeah.
But a lot of those moments, to be fair, did come later on in the game after it was quite clear that
that's okay though. That is allowed.
Yeah. That's fine. But in previous games, I think the 3 or 4 or the 2 league games at least before that, I think they had 1 shot on target in the 2 at Leicester. Is it the same old, or does something else need to change? Does the attacking pattern need to change? Does the formation need to change? Do more attackers need to be on the field? Does Kyogo need to start? Where are the answers?
Okay.
Yeah, where are the answers? Where are the answers?
Okay, so I've got 2 minutes to solve what Chris Davies has had a weekend to think about. Okay, a couple of bits of mitigation. I think it felt like against Swansea, Blues had alighted upon a combination of my word, which was Dutch and Stansfield, and so early in its or in its embryonic stage of its development, for that to be taken out a minute before or 5 minutes before kickoff, I think that is seriously debilitating, and that is unfortunate. And the other thing I think is important to say is the context around the shot on target. Had we been 11-11 for the whole game, then we would have had a shot on target. It's important to understand that Chris Davies isn't saying that is his sort of his goal for a football match. He was asked about, the fans have gone away, been beaten 3-0 and you've not had a shot on target, and he's responded to, yes, this A, B, and C, and if that had been different, we would have had a shot on target. So it's important to say that was a response to a specific phrase thrown at him. It's not the sum total of his ambition at Coventry away. The more I talk about it, the more I am leaning towards that this was a set of unique circumstances, because you can't just wash away Swansea and say, that it was even until Swansea got tired because they played in midweek. I think there were promising signs against Swansea, and Blues didn't get to sort of explore or develop those promising signs because of the Dutch injury. We all know it's not functioning brilliantly, and questions have been asked about the pieces, the jigsaw pieces that Davies has been given to try and sort of put the puzzle together, the attacking puzzle together. And as I said, I did feel that those pieces were starting to fit a little bit against Swansea. You made a reference to the fact that Davies wants to know his best 11 by the October international break, don't you? Which is only, only a couple of games away. I don't have the answers other than to say keep trying the pieces, and then it's difficult because the opposition and the variables change, don't they? So that the right pieces one week might not be the right pieces the next week. I'm struggling for answers at the moment. I really am. My go-to response would be to hope that Dutch is fit for Tuesday, and then play Dutch and Stansfield again and see if you can build around that.
Yeah. No, I do think that losing Dutch is obviously a really, really big thing. And again, going back to the best 11 point, I have no idea what Blues' best 11 is really. And, Chris Davies wanted to be in a position where he gets to October there and he knows he's got an idea. I don't think he's going to admit to having a best 11, because then we go into the starters finishers thing again, don't we? But to be 2 games from that break, and I have no real idea what the best combination, even in defence, is. We're still kind of looking at midfield and saying, does Tommy Doyle deserve a chance? Can we get him into this team? The 2 midfielders clearly aren't functional or playing anywhere near what they have been in the past. And then, the attacking 4 could be anything really. Could be 4 from 8, couldn't it?
It felt like against Swansea, you came away from that game thinking, right, I can see it a little bit now. And then you come away from Coventry and you feel like the picture's less clear than it was before Swansea now, doesn't it? And obviously that picture is being obscured by suspensions and injuries again. You've mentioned the midfield too, and I don't think we can just brush over the fact that Pek and Iwata clearly haven't been as dominant as they were in League One. I don't suppose they were ever going to be, but you look at Victor Torp and Matt Grimes, and Matt Grimes remains, one of the best orchestrators in the Championship, doesn't he? And Blues haven't got that player. I thought on Saturday, when it was even, I was slightly surprised to see that Iwata was the one getting a bit further forward than Peck. As I said, it just feels like, again, we're back to more questions than answers. And speaking to somebody in the press room with good insight into Wolves, he's very surprised that Tommy Doyle isn't in that midfield 2, or indeed 3, if you want. I know we've discussed about playing Pekawata and Doyle, haven't we? But yeah, we're all trying to find the right combination of puzzle pieces in attack. Potentially, we need to be thinking about, have we got the right combination of puzzle pieces in the double pivot at the moment?
Yeah. Just before we move on from that press conference, Brian, and start looking towards Sheffield Wednesday, do you think Chris Davies is feeling the pressure a little bit? I mean, you look at the start, it's seven games in the league, 3 wins, a draw, and 3 defeats. They're still very much, within touching distance of the early pace setters. I think they're only a few points off second still. There's only really Middlesbrough that have accumulated a good chunk of points at this stage. Everyone else is much of a muchness, aren't they? Do you feel like the expectations have been raised, and he's, Blues are at a point where they're expecting to be challenging for those top 2-3 places and be right in the mix for those automatics, and kind of, just being that team that is in playoff contention is not enough for some people? Or do you think that's unrealistic at the moment with this group of players, given where Blues are after a transfer window with so many new faces, and that, where Blues are right now is perfectly acceptable?
I think they're doing okay. After the Swansea game, I felt it was a good start. Now I feel like it's been an okay start.
It changes week on week, doesn't it?
It does, doesn't it? Yeah, absolutely. As new information becomes available, you look at they've played two teams that were in the Premier League, albeit Leicester weren't. The Leicester side wasn't their Premier League side. They've gone to Blackburn, which is always been a very difficult ground. They've played Stoke. Were Stoke top when Blues went there? Second. They were second. And they've played Coventry, who are massively in form, playoff contenders as well. So it feels like every game's been tough. You only potentially look at the Oxford at home game and thought, that's a should win. All the other games felt like they've had a bit of jeopardy. And prior to Saturday, all of those preceding games had been decided by very narrow margins. It was the width of the margins on Saturday that was alarming. Now, your question was about pressure. I'm not sure the hierarchy have helped Chris Davies massively by saying that promotion is the aim, or a playoff campaign is the aim, and all the players have come in and talked about it as well, and that's clearly the messaging within the club. I'd love to know if the Ipswich squad was making those noises after they'd come through League One, whether everyone was talking about going back to back. Now, from the outside looking in, it felt like it was a surprise that they'd done that. Now, maybe they weren't surprised, but there's a big difference between that and whether they were actually verbalising their ambition to get to the Premier League. I think Chris Davies has been handed a difficult set of cards to play. Or no, the cards are okay in terms of the pieces he's got to play, but I think he's been handed a very difficult challenge. Just to assume that they're going to go straight through the divisions is, I don't think that has helped him at all.
I think Benjamin Bloom, when he came on our podcast over the summer, summed up quite well in that Ipswich were the surprise, weren't they? They took everyone by surprise at the start of that season and ended up with 10 wins from the opening 12 games, whereas everyone has seen Blues coming, haven't they? Blues have been very, very loud about what they've been doing.
I mean, that's the issue. Were Ipswich singing from the rooftops? I can't remember, and that would
they just weren't making that many signs. I don't think they largely went up with the same group of players, didn't they? And kind of had built that in League One, and that obviously worked and developed in the Championship. Blues could have done that. They've obviously tried to not hedge their bets by signing better quality players, by bringing in Kyogo as a replacement for Alfie May, by bringing in Dutch and all these players, Tommy Doyle. But again, that has really, really increased expectations, hasn't it? Because you all of a sudden sign a player who scored, 80 goals in however many games, 160 games for Celtic or whatever. Sign a player who's been playing the Premier League for the last 2 years at the age of 23 with Wolves.
But you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't know, aren't you, as well?
A Germany international. You're putting yourself in what should be a position to challenge. But I suppose everyone is expecting Blues to be a real contender. And, they put it out themselves, didn't they, in that, when they sold the season tickets at the end of last season, sorry.
Yeah.
And the actual quote, which I found very interesting, was the goal is clear to be competing at the top end of the Sky Bet Championship table. That's going to put pressure on a manager, isn't it? It's going to put pressure on a manager, and supporters. I don't blame them for being overly ambitious, because that's kind of what they're being led to believe. They're led to believe is the target this year, and it's Chris Davies isn't an unambitious manager. I think he's probably just kind of trying to manage it manage down and manage up, in terms of managing us, managing supporters, and trying to keep everyone a little bit level, but then probably having to manage up and have people above him who are saying promotion very much is the aim this season. So he's in a little bit of a difficult spot, I think, there.
And it's a new thing, because the narrative was quite easy to peddle for a young manager in his first season in charge last season, wasn't it? It was all wins and upward trajectory, and and as I said, it was quite an easy sort of path to tread. This season, the narrative from the club hasn't changed. We're still on that same upward trajectory, still on that same journey, but the journey has become steeper. It's more complicated by the fact that he's been given lots more pieces, and Blues had to recruit. Obviously, they couldn't have just gone up with the same team and hope for the best. And the signings that you made, everyone is right to be excited by this goal machine coming from Celtic, all round as it was, and the German international and Dimmy Gray coming home. The excitement has built, but that just because you're excited doesn't mean to say it's not a difficult job for Chris Davies. And Chris Davies is, are we 8 games into his second season as a manager? He's still learning. I think we saw a little bit of that at Coventry. I'm afraid. I think that's the first time he would have encountered an experience like that in his current role.
Yeah, and I will say, I think the Championship this year is a remarkably tight league. We've already said that Blues games, apart from Leicester with a late goal and Coventry, which was the outlier, but they've largely been decided by one goal, haven't they? All of them, the wins and the defeats. So you look at every game that happens over a weekend, you look at the league table, there's not that much in it this year. You're not going to get a Burnley or a Leeds from last year who get 100 points, but you're probably going to get a good chunk of teams who get to about 80, I think, which doesn't usually happen. So, I think Blues probably are maybe a little bit off where they should be after this stage, but only by a couple of points or maybe 3 points. I don't think they're miles off it, to be honest.
No, I agree.
Yeah,
well, I think so. What's making it complicated now is injuries and the fact that he's going to have to change the back line on Tuesday night because of the suspension. The two midfielders, they're not as effective as they were last season and probably weren't ever going to be. So that maybe needs looking at. And as we said 1,000 times, the combinations in attack, it feels like all the units, require a little bit of maintenance, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah, so let's look at Sheffield Wednesday. They are 23rd in the Championship. 1 win, 2 draws, 4 defeats from their opening 7. They drew with QPR at the weekend after beating Portsmouth 2-0 away from home the week before. Brian, everyone looks at Sheffield Wednesday and sees all the issues they've had in the summer, sees they've had to kind of cobble a squad together that is probably less than ideal for their manager, and probably would expect Blues to get 3 points. Because that's the expectation, do you think Chris Davies sticks to kind of what he knows has worked at times this season, i.e. the 11 that would have played against Swansea or something close to that, or the 11 that would have played against Oxford? Or do you think he uses this game to experiment? Obviously, we know defensively he's going to have to do a little bit of experimentation, but do you think he will resist the urge to make the changes that perhaps many people would like to see?
Are you asking me if he's going to play Pekinawata?
That's what I'm getting at. Yeah, does he trust that system so much and those two players so much, and he knows they can perform at Championship level because we've seen that already, that he trusts they can get over a bad performance and play again? Because the way I see it, Brian, is that if you've signed Tommy Doyle and beaten off, a multitude of championship teams and maybe even some above to sign him from Wolves, to not play him in this game would be a bit of a slap in the face, I think.
Right. Okay. I was going slightly more risk averse and saying that because there are going to be changes in other departments, because there has to be, maybe Dutch isn't fit. Well, we won't know until Tuesday night. Obviously, Robinson, there will have to be a change in defence. I wonder if you do just try and nail down some of those variables and keep a bit of consistency in what you're going to get out of a particular area of the team. So, listen, as I said earlier, people are asking questions about why Tommy Doyle isn't in there yet, and I don't think he's a 10. Blues don't play with 8, so therefore you do look at him potentially fitting into the Pekiwata department. I don't see a change of formation. I don't think it's a game. A change of formation would feel too knee jerk.
Yeah.
And as I said, I think that the enforced changes already make you want to lean to build around something consistent, maybe. So, slap in the face or not, I'd be moderately surprised if Doyle came in for it's more likely to be Peck than Iwata, we think, because of the skill sets, don't we?
Yeah, I would probably argue that you could play him and Peck together in this particular game as a one-off, just kind of see how it works against a lower-end championship team at home.
Yeah, Sheffield Wednesday game now, Alex. They're not going to come and lie down. In the bits I've seen of Sheffield Wednesday, which isn't every minute of every game, they've been quite feisty. So, I wouldn't roll over and think it's going to be a physical cakewalk.
No. I mean, Blues would have to create a line that has more than enough physicality to cope for it. But I don't think Peck lacks physicality. I think Tommy Doyle, you could look at him and say, that's probably not his greatest skill set. Iwata and Doyle are very different players. Doyle's going to give you more in possession. Iwata's probably going to give you more out of it. But I think, could Tommy Doyle sit there and dictate play in this particular game from deep and Peck be the kind of legs next to him? I think Peck's got that skill set to be, and I think Doyle can do that. So I don't see that as being a massive issue for a game like this, where you would expect Blues to have most of the ball. If they're going to have 65% of the ball and they're going to be well set up and well organised enough to cope and protect Doyle if they lose possession high up or, Sheffield Wednesday spring a counter-attack, then I don't see many issues with fielding those two together. I do think Blues need more quality from those positions at home, in home games especially. Wata in possession this season hasn't been particularly good. I think his pass completion on Saturday was down at 70%. So he's giving the ball away too much and not using it well enough. And he is generally a player who does play a lot of sideways and backwards passes, simple passes. So to have that kind of pass completion suggests that, he could do a lot better.
Okay. I mean, I'm just looking at Sheffield Wednesday. They are averaging 42.7% possession, so just under 43% possession. So Blues will have, get pushing on 60% of possession. Yeah, okay. I wonder if it's a gamble in a game where you're already having to make changes. I'm wondering if a familiar partnership or combination would be helpful, and then maybe Doyle off the bench if you want to take the game one way or another way. But yeah, I mean, you've done an 11, haven't you? Which and you've quite seduced me into it, I have to say.
I was going to say we should actually say the 11 we think Chris Davies will pick, and then we can talk about my 11, which I don't think he'll pick. So
okay, yeah, do that then. Yeah.
So the 11 we think he'll edge towards, Allsop in goal, his usual 4-2-3-1. I think Asai Samuel's the obvious choice at right back. I think for balance, we're both going for Clara and Cashin at centre back with Cochrane back in at left back. He did speak at his press conference last week about the balance of his 4 centre backs, and he suggested that he's now got 2 left footers and 2 right footers. So that would mean that Cashin is the replacement for Robinson and Neumann is the replacement for Clara. So your 2 midfielders, I would still, like you said, Brian, I would still expect him to play Peck and Iwata, because I feel like he's probably not going to want to take that many risks when he's already got to make changes. And then you get into the attacking areas and it's kind of a free-for-all, isn't it? Are we saying Patrick Robertson on the right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I do. I think at home when you're getting a bit more ball, I do think Patrick Roberts, yeah.
Yeah, and we're saying Stansfield's been the most effective number 10 this season for Blues.
Yeah,
So I would say
he's taken some criticism for the last couple of games, but yes, it's a massive call to not play Jay.
And then you've got a choice of Damari Gray or Lewis Koumas wide left, haven't you? And I think given Damari Gray started all 7 league games so far, he's probably going to be the favourite, isn't he?
I would think so.
Then it's Dykes or Kyogo, and I think Chris Davies probably will even give in to the calls for Kyogo, I think, for this game. I'd expect Kyogo to start it at home.
Right, okay.
Yeah?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm not going to fight you over any of that. I do like the way you flipped the team, though, for your suggested team. So do you want to run through that?
Yeah, so we saw it last season, didn't we, when Blues had a bad result at Shrewsbury. Chris Davies took out the right back, put Christian Bielik to right back to get Ben Davies back in the team, and allowed Alex Cochrane as left back to move forward. And that obviously meant in turn that Jay Stansfield could play wide left and he could come inside and he wasn't asked to hug the touchline, which I don't think Jay Stansfield is that sort of winger. I like him as a left winger, but I like it when he comes inside. He's not a natural wide player, is he? So I've kind of tried to do that with Allsop in goal. I've put Phil Neumann at right back. You know, we know Neumann's played there a little bit at the start of his career. He's obviously got the speed to play there. And the key thing here, I think, is that it will allow, when Blues do go to their back three in possession, which we expect them to have a lot of the ball in this game, that Neumann plays as the outside centre-back on the right side. Clara is back in the middle, where I think it will suit him best, because then he's not going to get in one-on-one situations where wingers can go past him. And Aaron Cashin would play as the left side centre-back in possession. So it would be a back four of Neumann, Clara, Cashin and Cochrane. Cochrane in that shape would be allowed to go forward a little bit more. I think the defensive solidity of having those 3 centre-backs there would allow you to play Tommy Doyle and Peck in midfield and give Iwata a night off. I think you need that extra quality. Obviously, Doyle on set pieces would help as well, because you've got an extra bit of big body in Neumann to aim for on attacking set pieces. And then I'd play Patrick Roberts right, if he's fit, Marvin Duksh as the 10, Stansfield off the left, and Kyogo as the striker. Roberts, I'm told, he's equally effective whether he's asked to come inside off the right or stay wide and do that. So obviously he's left-footed, so he'd be looking to get crosses on his left foot, but that doesn't necessarily mean he couldn't stay wide. Duksh, I think he's obviously a 9 or a 10. He's played as a 9 in his first league start for Blues. He's come off the bench and played as a 10. I think eventually we might see him as a 10. I think Chris Davies is probably going to want a little bit more mobility from his striker, which obviously is provided by Stansfield and Kyogo. Kyogo, has to take his next chance to start, I think. He's when he gets those chances, and he will get chances because his movement's excellent. He just needs to start taking them. So that is my alternative 11, Brian. Yeah,
I like it. I wouldn't fight you over the Doyle thing. I think if I was going to take one of the 2 established centre mids out and put Doyle in, I'd be tempted to take Peck out, playing with Iwata. But that's either or, isn't it? Some people will sort of not enjoy you saying Stansfield on the left, but I think if Cochrane is the width on the left, that allows Jay to come in slightly more centrally, doesn't it? I think if Neumann is on the right, you then ask him, well, where's the width on the right? Roberts is the answer. Roberts isn't necessarily a go round the back kind of winger, is he really? But as you said, the sort of the quality into the box, you can see someone like Roberts picking out Kyogo's runs as well. I'm all for Kyogo getting another game, and hopefully in a game where he'll get some chances, get the weight of chances he seems to need to score one. I do like that. And as you said, it was something that was done last season. Was it Exeter away? They changed it after Shrewsbury, didn't they? And went on that run where they won 8 or 9 in a row. So and they had Clara as the right back, and I think if memory serves me rightly, it was Cochrane on the left going forward, doing the width that way. So I think that's a good way to skin this particular tactical cat. Yeah, he definitely won't go for that. He'll go for the 11 we said earlier, but it's just an option. I think at some stage this season we will see him flip the system. I think also going into that Wrexham game where
we know what Wrexham brings. Wrexham brings a lot of aerial bombardment, lots of crosses from wide areas, and you're going to need centre-backs who can handle that. So it wouldn't surprise me if he had an extra big body, extra centre-back in his back four for that particular game. So why not give it a go? I mean, yes, you can say don't experiment in a championship game, because, you run the risk of losing it, but I do think Blues need to use these next 2 games to experiment a little if we're going to get to the international break and have some idea what the best 11 or most functional Blues 11 is.
Do you think 4 points is the minimum return from these next 2 games?
I think so, yeah, because you're looking at Sheffield Wednesday saying that's a home banker or should be a home banker, and then you're looking at Wrexham thinking, I say home banker in my mind, that's a 3 points, and then you look at Wrexham and think that, really if they could do what they did last year there and get a point, it's acceptable. Ideally, you'd want 3, wouldn't you? But yeah, I think 4 points from these next 2 games would be good.
Yeah, indeed. Again, what bits I've seen of Wrexham defensively, they look as though they're really struggling. Albeit, as you say, we know how they're going to play, and they've got some good pieces in attack. I really am quite engaged by the prospect of, getting your 3 central defenders onto the field. I mean, Cashin's not the tallest. I was going to say 3 big central defenders. Cashin's not the tallest, but he is a centre back with a good jump apparently. So yeah, I do like it, and a nice home win on Tuesday night does just sort of calm things down a little bit, doesn't it? It really is quite a sort of a watershed game, I think, this one.
Yeah, fingers crossed we get that. Thank you, everyone, for listening and tuning in. Please send us a comment, hit like, subscribe as usual. Brian, thank you for your time, and hopefully Blues can start this week with a victory. A big keep right on from both of us.